Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk About podcast. The next 3 podcasts are a special series called Voices of Change, Breaking the Silence on Suicide. I'm taking a deep dive into stories of individuals whose lives have been profoundly impacted by suicide. In part 1, I meet Karen, whose life was forever altered when her partner tragically took his own life. Karen shares her heartfelt story, her journey through grief, and her powerful call for mental health policy reform in Scotland, a change she believes is vital to prevent more families from enduring the same loss. In part 2, I hear from John, the founder of the Canmore Trust. John's son Cameron's suicide changed the course of his life and inspired him to create a space for others to share their stories, find solace and support each other. John will discuss the mission of the Canmore Trust and the work they're doing to foster hope and understanding. And finally, part 3, I speak with Ben Akers, who turned the devastating loss of his best friend Steve into action. Ben's grief motivated him to establish Talk Club, a mental health charity focused on men and suicide prevention. He'll share his philosophy behind Talk Club, the impact it's making, and how he hopes to encourage more men to open up on their mental health struggles. Each one of these stories is deeply personal, and yet they connect us all to the universal need for compassion, awareness and systemic change. I also need to issue a trigger warning. These stories are honest and raw and in some places very difficult to listen to. So please be aware. Karen's story.
So me and Luke met and it was just like any normal relationship. We had our ups and downs. But Luke did make his first suicide attempt in 2010, and that was, he had taken some pills and he had taken himself to hospital. And at that point in time, I was a student nurse. So I was in a ward at a different hospital in our area, and I was getting phone calls for the ward he was in. So that kind of ended my nursing career because my priority was to make sure he was all right and I couldn't do both. So as kind of time progressed, he did have other attempts. He had an attempt in 2013 and 2016, and both the times he was admitted into the hospital because he was in a psychosis. So we had kind of been through this before, where he had been through a psychosis. We had managed to get him into the ward and he got the support, he got the help, and he came back out the other end and he was better. And we managed to kind of keep him stable for a few years. But then in 2017, Luke's mental health started deteriorating. Looking back now, it probably started to deteriorate early on in the year, but at that time, it was just the 2 years were arguing, our relationship wasn't in a good place, and looking back now I can see that was the start of his mental health deteriorating. So we kind of fast forward to December 2017 and Luke was like severely unwell, where he was having audio and visual hallucinations, and he was saying there was people coming to kill him. He was just really kind of unwell, but he was still trying to work. And in his role, he worked with gas, so that was obviously a concern for me, because it's not just himself he was putting in danger, it was other people. So we were monitoring that, and because it was through Christmas and New Year, we were trying to get him days off, so we were able to get him a couple of days off, which took the pressure off of the work. But as December started to unfold, his mental health started to deteriorate very rapidly, to the point where it was like, no, we need to get some help here. So on the 22nd of December was the first time I had phoned out to our doctors, and it was 111, and at that point in time the mental health hub was there. So we spoke to the nurse on duty, who was very proud to tell us that she was the only mental health nurse trained in NHS 24. But there was nothing she could do to help us because she didn't didn't think that his mental health was bad enough to be in a face-to-face assessment to be carried out. At that point, I wasn't happy and I asked to speak to the out-of-hours doctor, and over the next couple of days, it wasn't the only time I spoke to this mental health nurse. I spoke to her a couple of times. That was just my first encounter. So when I spoke to the out-of-hours doctor, because I had refused what the nurse had told me, and the doctor phoned me back, and the doctor actually said to me there was nothing they could do to help. There was no medication within the out-of-hours GP surgery that would help ease his symptoms. Now just remember that for later, because that can be proved as a lie. So at the end of that phone call, the doctor basically ended it with good luck with him. So moving forward, the next day, progressively got worse, and we took him up to accident emergency on the 23rd day of December. So when we went to accident emergency, the attitude of the staff was pretty shocking. They'd done a 10-15 minute assessment, then they went away to talk about it, and they came back and they actually said that Luke didn't pose a risk to himself. He wasn't suicidal, he wasn't having audio or visual hallucinations, it was just mild depression. And once I challenged, because it was a junior psychiatrist and a mental health nurse that done that assessment, and when I challenged them on that assessment, and when I challenged them in that outcome, and I said, wait a minute, he's really unwell, I feel he is suicidal, I feel he's making plans, he's having ending conversations, because there was a lot of concerning things Luke was saying, where he was asking like family members, would you look after Karen if anything happened to me? So wee signs like that was very concerning. And then even when he was talking to me, he was telling me things, it was as if he was emptying his conscience. He was telling me things that I never knew. He was sharing things that to this day I still struggle with, and that was him emptying everything that was inside him, because he already had made his choice, I believe. So on the 23rd, when I challenged the nurse on no taking him into hospital or no sectioning him, he actually came into my face and tried to intimidate me, which I might be a wee woman, but I'm a wee woman with a very big mouth. So that didn't go down too well, and we ended up having to leave. But see, on that process of Luke being in accident emergency and us waiting to get seen by the psychiatry team, that was a whole trauma in itself. So we were sitting in this busy accident emergency round about Christmas time, there's people coming in, you've got Luke who's there, people are talking about him, people are looking at him, very severely anxiety and paranoia. That environment exasperated the feelings, and even at one point I asked to sit through another wee bit where the ambulances usually bring people through, and we were sitting there for a period of time, but we got asked to move. So Luke's symptoms while we were in the hospital seemed to get worse, but how the hospital couldn't see that, I don't know. So moving forward, I had also phoned on the 23rd, I had phoned the out-of-hours doctor again, and I got the mental health nurse. Her name was Karen, funny enough, and she had said to us that there was nothing she could do to help. So I'm like, look, I'm actually a mental health nurse, and I told a wee white lie, and I said, I'm actually a mental health nurse, and she would get into a conversation about where you worked, and I told a wee fib about where I worked in an industry. And her attitude changed towards me after I said that, which I found pretty interesting. And before we even went to accident emergency that night, I had already an assessment out in the community with the mental health team for Christmas Eve, which was the 24th of December, to get Luke an assessment. So when we had went to accident emergency that night, they used, because I had already that assessment in place, they used that as, but he's getting an assessment, but he needed an assessment there and now. And then after, they actually said that it was them that had got that in place. Like when we went through the reviews after Luke passed, they had actually said they had done that, they had put that in place, which wasn't the case. So we went to on the 24th of December, we went to the CPNs, and Luke was in with them 10 minutes again, and then I get called in, and they had said they could smell cannabis off Luke, and they couldn't do an assessment while he was under the influence of cannabis. A fact that I point out is, so that was on the 24th of December, Luke died the 29th. 5 days later, Luke's toxicology report came back with no cannabis in his system. But that's another story. So they didn't do the assessments, and they said that he had to go see addiction service. The addiction service didn't, because we were in the period of Christmas and New Year, addiction services was closed until Thursday the 28th. So there was nowhere else we could really go apart from addiction services. And something I found out after Luke died is addiction services do not have 24-hour crisis care. The mental health service will arguably say they've got 24-hour care, but addictions don't. And mental health doesn't deal with addictions. So where do people go when somebody's in a mental health crisis and they're putting it down to addiction? It's mental health, and this is where the division is between mental health and addiction, because they were putting all his issues, they were putting all Luke's issues down to addiction, when it really wasn't addiction. It was childhood trauma. It was, addiction did obviously played a role in it, but the childhood trauma that Luke had experienced as a child, going up into teens, and even in his adulthoods, but he was still dealing with very emotional, abusive relationships, and he was still very much getting manipulated and gaslighted with certain family members. So there was all that kind of in place. So to put that all in addiction was just ludicrous to me, to be fair. So after that appointment, we were kind of a loss. And I remember at one point before then, Luke had says to me, something's going to happen to me and they're going to kill me, but then they're going to put it down as murder. They're going to put it down as suicide, but I've not killed myself. They've murdered me. So that's kind of how unwell he was, and that was like another wee sign that, no, wait a minute, he's not right here. He's planning things. So then on Christmas Eve, Luke, just a sudden calm kind of just came over Luke, and I remember saying to him, and I feel really bad for it now, but I can remember saying to him when he had says to me about somebody's going to kill him, I remember asking him the question, are you planning to kill yourself? Are you suicidal? And he kind of looked at me, and I went into a wee bit, and I'm like, see if you are. I was like, you're nothing but a selfish bastard. And know that I think people who die by suicide are selfish. But what I was saying to him is you're a selfish bastard, because our Waynes, who were only 7 and 10 at the time, the day before Christmas, or 2 days before Christmas, and their dad took his own life, all they would remember the rest of their life was how their dad died just before Christmas. And that was what kind of, I didn't mean it was anybody that died by suicide. I didn't mean that they were selfish. I just mean in that moment, that's how I felt. So then Luke's full focus turned on, the Waynes have to have a good Christmas. The Waynes have to have a good Christmas. And he wanted to buy the Waynes, he asked me to go get sledges, because he wanted to take the kids sledging, because there was snow at that time, and it was all about kind of making memories. And looking back now again, that was him making the final memories for his wains so that that's what they would remember rather than the bad things. And that is what I think that me saying that did for Luke. And I also think it gave us a wee bit more extra time. Maybe I should have said to him, if you'd done it at any point. But he was just so unwell. He wasn't thinking straight. And I can also remember in one of the assessments, they said because Luke was looking forward to Christmas, he couldn't be planning to take his own life. And when I was trying to explain to them, but we had this conversation, no. I genuinely didn't know what I was talking about. They knew best. So we get through Christmas, and then Boxing Day, Christmas, he was so calm. And Christmas Eve, it was the first night he had actually slept. The night that I needed him to be up, he slept. So I just left him, and I had Santa Claus put the Christmas presents round about him. And then when I heard the kids moving about, I went in and pulled him into the room so that he could have that experience of getting into the living room with him like we've done every year. So then Boxing Day came, and it was as if it all started again, because I kind of thought, maybe we've gotten through it, maybe this is at the other end. So then Boxing Day, and it was the same again. So I phoned the CPNs, and I was begging them, I'm like, please just help me. And they kept saying to me, you'll get all the help you need in Thursday. It's a really good service. It's an all singing, all dancing service. They've got psychiatrists there. You'll get medication that you need for them to get them sleep. And then at that point, I had actually says, what medication could I phone and get off my doctor to get to him? Like, what would you prescribe him if you could prescribe him? And they had told me it would be Zimmerframe. So I did phone my doctor and got some Zimmerframe, and the purpose to get to Luke. Because to be fair, going to the doctors and saying I wasn't sleeping wasn't a lie either, because it was the truth. So we got them, and I gave him one of them, didn't touch him, didn't help. So then phone again on the 27th to the CPNs, nothing. I don't know, many times throughout that period I'd actually phoned the 111 as well. So then on the 27th, we went back up to the hospital because he was just kind of deteriorating worse and worse. So that was on the Wednesday. And again, we got a lovely nurse. This time it was just a nurse who genuinely seemed less interested, didn't seem as if he cared, didn't really have a clue how to do the assessment because I sat in the assessment. And bearing in mind I've got my experience for being on the wards myself and being a mental health nurse and working in social care for many years, I've got that experience. He couldn't give a damn whether Luke left that appointment and went and took his own life, or whether he got took into it. He did not care. And it was a space of 10 minutes again. None rang with you, away you go, Mr. Henderson, and Luke came home again. So on the 28th, so we're at the Thursday now, we took him to the self-referrals, because we get told the self-referrals started at 9 o'clock Thursday morning. Just go, make a self-referral, you'll get seen there and then, you'll get medication, you'll get this, you'll get that, all singing, all dancing. We go at the back of 9 and self-referrals are at 2 o'clock. So I had asked my dad had took the kids, and at this point we hadn't a car either. Our car had broke down, so that was another issue. So my dad had took the kids and dropped us off, and then when we had to come back at 2, I wasn't too happy at that, because we had been told to come down at this time. We had got them up, got somebody to take the kids, everything was all sorted. I wasn't too happy. So where the addiction centre was just a few feet from where the CPNs were. So I went straight back into the CPNs, and it was a senior nurse I spoke to this time. And I'm like, and she spoke to Luke as well, and she's like, look, do you feel that you can keep yourself safe? Now that's not a question you just ask randomly, but well, I'll go into that a wee bit later, why I'm saying this. That isn't a question you just ask randomly, but she did ask that question. So she clearly had concerns for his mental health, or she wouldn't have asked that question. So we left and we actually walked home that day, because I'm like, right, we'll try and walk home, maybe the fresh air, clear your head, get some exercise. And we were maybe about half an hour to an hour walk, so we're like, we'll do that. We get home, and then we went back at 2 o'clock to do the self-referral. That self-referral was a paper filling exercise. You get no help, you get nothing. So all our hopes, all our hopes of trying to get Luke help fell on the Thursday. It all fell in the addiction services, because that's what we get told. It's an all dancing, all singing service. You'll get the help. And that never happened. And you could just see the deflation in Luke, because I kept saying to him, right up to that point, I was like, we just need to get to Thursday. If we get to Thursday, we'll get the help. If we get to Thursday, we'll get the help. And then the help never came. And this is just my feeling on it. Luke couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't take the torment. He couldn't take the voices. He couldn't take because these voices were being so unkind. They were saying they were going to do stuff to me and the kids. They were saying they were coming to kill us all. We were being watched. We were being bugged. The TV was bugged. The police were coming. They were trying to set him up. Like, he was just really, really kind of unwell. So I just kept saying, right, we need to get to Thursday. Just get to Thursday. Just get to Thursday. And then nothing happened. And the thing that made it even more difficult for Luke is he had been signed off his GP practice, because I would be making appointments for him in the past, and he wouldn't be turning up, and so he didn't have a GP at the time. So I tried to get my own GP, and I found out about you could get somebody on the register for a temporary patient. So we tried to do that as well, but we couldn't get him seen on the Thursday. There was a chance we could get him seen on the Friday, but I had to go up and fill out this form, which I did, but then the receptionist says, no, we don't have that appointment. So again, that was us left, no help, nothing to do. And I can remember that Thursday, I was just so exhausted that I had been we had been...
Do you want to stop for a bit? Sure.
Because I think if I stop, I'll start back again.
Don't like seeing you.
I think it needs to be done though.
Yeah.
It
No,
really
I totally
does.
agree it does, but it's hard.
It needs to be done, because I think people need to realise just how bad things can get. Yeah. And even when you are trying to support somebody, it's going to impact you.
Oh, for sure.
And it's going to impact you, and it's... People need to see that side of it as well, I think, because a lot of the time people see me and they see a smile and they see a
strength,
and they don't see this side. And I think sometimes that you need to show that raw emotion to try and fix the system and get it better, because I don't want anybody else to go through what we've went through. I really don't, because it's the worst pain that I've been through in my life, and I have been through a lot. But losing Luke in the way I did, I wouldn't even wish that my worst nightmare. I really wouldn't. But that night, Luke was so calm. He was so calm. It was me that was hyper and stressed, and Luke was just calm. And we got a Chinese, his favourite Chinese, because he hadn't really been eating either. So when he had asked to get a Chinese, I was like, aye. We got that, we had that. Because I fell asleep very, very quick after this. So when Luke was taking the tablet, he asked for a drink in my can. So I gave him my can for him to take his tablet. I don't think he swallowed that tablet, because I fell asleep very quick when I was purposely staying up until he fell asleep, and then I was sleeping, and then once I was getting up to get the weans, I'd let him sleep on a little longer, or until he woke up. But he never used to, he wasn't sleeping that long, which wasn't like Luke, because Luke liked his sleep. he really did like his sleep. So he wasn't sleeping and stuff, and I think he gave me that sleeping tablet, and then I just kind of crashed. And then I remember waking up in the middle of the night. I'm unsure what it was that woke me up first, because there was a noise, and then I heard my son shouting on me. And when I heard my son shouting me, and that was like I heard the noise first, and then I heard my son shouting, and that's what kind of really jolted me awake. I have never, ever in my life felt fear like I did that night I woke up. As a mother's instinct, your first instinct is to protect your child. And when your son's shouting you, your first instinct is to go to them. I shouted back to him, "What is it, wee man?" And he's like, "I'm scared." And I didn't want to say this, but so was I. And I was that paralysed with fear. I couldn't move for a couple of minutes. And then I got up and I goes into the room and I says, "Are you all right, buddy?" And he's like, "No, I'm scared. Dad woke me up." So at this point I'm like, right, where is he? Because he's not beside me. And the dog was at the bottom of the Wayne's bed. And it's like the kids' bunk beds. So he wasn't obviously in there. And then I like goes to walk like down the hall. And as I was going down my hall, I passed like my toilet, my kitchen, and he wasn't there. So the next place was the living room. And I went into the living room and he wasn't there. I'm like, where the fuck is he? And I don't know what made me look, but I just kind of looked to my stairs and there he was. And my first instinct was, "What are you doing?" Because he just looked as if he was standing there. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And then that's when I seen it. And I ran down the stairs and I'm like, see that running down the stairs, that felt as if I was never getting to the bottom of the stairs. And I got there and he was gone. He was just gone. So then my kind of priority was, what the fuck did he? I'm trying to find my phones. I couldn't find my phone. And luckily we did have a house phone and we had a thing in it, but we never ever used it. It was just there for the internet. So then we phoned the police. Took them 50 minutes to get to me because I got lost. And my kind of priority was just keeping the kids away, because at this point I'm screaming, I'm hysterical. My daughter had woke up. Then the police came, and then it was a case of where Luke had died. There was only one way in and out of our house, and where Luke had died, there was no way us passing that without seeing it. So then it kind of became, how do we get the kids out without them seeing it? And the police that was there, they were good. They couldn't have been any nicer. They were trying to kind of joke with the kids, and one of the, and my daughter always remembers this. He had an Apple Watch and it was the Mickey Mouse face, and he was getting the kids to click on the Mickey Mouse face, and he trying to keep their, so that they didn't know too much of what was going on at that point. So how we had to get them out the house was the police had to actually carry them, and we put towels over their head so that they didn't see. And that's obviously very traumatic for them, and as a mother that they had to go through that, I just wish I could have protected them more, because I was trying to protect them as much as I could, but unfortunately they seen too much as well. Because I remember one night, it was bunk beds I had, so my daughter was in the top bunk, and he said there was a dog in her bed, and we did have a dog, but it wasn't Rocco that was in her bed, it was another dog, and he woke the kids up that night to check. So we tried to protect them as much as I could, but they seen too much. So then after Luke's died, I went into rage mode. I was so angry. And that night, so that was the 29th of December, my sister phoned the out-of-hours doctor for me because of the state I was in. They took me to the out-of-hours doctor, and I actually remember messaging MSPs while I was sitting in the accident emergency room, because I was just like, no, this is your fault. Like, if you had took him in hospital, if you had to have helped me, if you even gave me medicine to ease his symptoms so that he could get asleep, just to knock him out to get asleep, that would have been such a difference, because that was the difference for the last time to this time. So when I was at that appointment, funny enough, the out-of-hours doctor never gave me a prescription. He handed me 2 lorazepam. Now remember I said earlier that when I phoned the out-of-hours doctor for Luke, and the out-of-hours doctor told me that they didn't hold any antipsychotic medication or any medication that could ease his symptoms in Douglas Street, which is the practice, that's where I was, and I was getting handed 2 lorazepam. And I can remember breaking down in that, and I'm like, how did you not give this to him? Because if you'd gave him this, I might not be sitting here today. And it was the wee nurse's face. The wee nurse couldn't have been any nicer. And the doctor as well, they couldn't have been any nicer. They were trying to help me as much as they possibly could at that point. But I was just so angry. I was angry at why they didn't help us. I felt let down. I just felt that everything was set against us for the start. So after that, I also messaged MSPs, and one of them get back to me, and I met with her. And since then, Monica has been a major support right throughout everything I've done. She's advised me on next steps to take. She's helped me write out complaints. She helped me through the suicide review. She's brought it up at First Minister's questions. She supported the petition. She really has been a pillar of support, but right even for that very first day when I sent that email. And I actually looked at it not that long ago, and just how broken I was, and I don't know why she wasn't who is this psycho? Because my spelling was all over the place. I was jumping from bit to bit, but she actually took the time to sit with me. And then we went through the suicide reviews. We went through the complaint to NHS Lanarkshire. Every protocol was followed, apparently. So I kind of exhausted all avenues with there, because I'm no, this is a failure in the system. There's something no right here, there's something failing. If it wasn't failing, Luke would have been helped, something would have been in place. And they said, no, this is procedures, this is policies, this comes from the government and blah, blah, blah. So I'm well, if you're telling me that's policies and that's procedures, your policies and procedures are wrong. Where do I go to change them? And at the government. So that's exactly what I've done. I put my first petition in 2018, and that was going for maybe about a year and a half, and that was before COVID. And they said that I was calling for a full review of the mental health service, because their system isn't working. It's clearly not working. We're getting progressively every single year suicide is on the up. There is no hospital beds have been severely reduced, and even in the last 5 years the beds have been reduced, and they're getting reduced in every single year. More and more is getting cut. the amount of people that are going through accident emergency doors with mental health related illnesses is on the rise, but there's no beds for these people, there's no places for these to go. Staff themselves, they're struggling as well with their own mental health because they are not getting supported from management and government. So it kind of opened my eyes when I was finding more and more out, because originally it was certain staff members I was blaming, but then when I started to look at the bigger picture, their hands were kind of tied as well. So I'm like, we need a full review of the mental health service. So after that petition, the government, the committee closed that because it was at the Citizens Petitions Committee. At the time, they closed it, and they says that the government was taking significant steps to combat the issues I had raised in my petition.
6 years ago, right?
Aye.
Right.
Aye, I disagreed. So I waited. The rules are you have to wait a year. So I waited a year, I know.
Why?
It's so stupid. I think I waited over a year. So I waited just over the year, say, and I resubmitted the exact same petition. But only this time I was getting more people involved. So there was kind of about 10 years to start off with. And some of them shared their stories with the Petitions Committee through written submissions, and they'd done like some media for it to try and boost it. So there was about 10 families in total, similar to Luke, all had been failed, all had been let down, and their loved ones no longer are here anymore. But then when I'm actually like doing my evidence to the committee, or when I'm doing my written submissions, I'm not allowed to mention that.
Crazy.
So it's kind of, I feel as if they're trying to make it as if it's just me that's feeling this, when actually there's a full nation feeling the same way. This isn't just me, there is a full nation. So from that, I'm just like, what is it going to take for you to listen? So another thing that I've done, because I've, from the last 6.5 years, my full focus has been on fixing the mental health service, raising awareness for mental health, raising awareness for suicide prevention, and doing everything I can to make that happen. So during my first petition, I felt like they were dismissing me because I'm for the west of Scotland. I talk quite slang. I've only got a high school education, and I'd never finished my nursing. I do have my HNC in social care, but that was dismissed. I just felt as if they were looking down on me, as if, what does she know? It's just some mouthy wee lassie. What is she going to do? It's not going to go anywhere. She's saying X, Y and Z, blah, blah, blah. They never expected me to arm myself with the knowledge that I needed to come back and fight them the second time round. So I put the petition in. I got myself to college, and I done a swap course at college to try and get the qualifications to get into uni, because I'm like, I am not accepting this. And I'm severely dyslexic, so reading and writing is not my area. But with determination, hard work, you can achieve anything you want to achieve. So done my college course, and then I get a place. I had my 5 options I'd put in for uni. I actually got into all 5, which I'm like, I didn't expect to get into 1, never mind 5. So I was kind of happy with that, and I'm like, what if I'm not going to be able to do it? What if all the kind of things that goes on with that? Then went to uni, and as I'm learning things at uni, I'm starting to apply it to my mental health research and campaign and stuff. So put in freedom of information requests before in Lanarkshire, but then at the start of this year, I tend to find during about Luke's anniversary, that's when all these emotions comes up. That's when all these I need to do something comes into play. So I decided during that time I was going to put in freedom of information requests, but I wasn't just going to focus on my area, Lanarkshire. I was going to send freedom of information requests to every single health board in Scotland, which was 14 plus NHS 24, about their mental health hub. And as the results were coming in, I'm like, I was flabbergasted at these results. Bearing in mind I had looked to suicide and been through what I'd been through and knew how bad the mental health service was, from my experience, I didn't realise just how bad it was. As all this evidence was coming in, but I have made it my life's mission to get the evidence, to get to Parliament, to call a review of the mental health service. But I'm not just happy with the review. I'm not be happy until I see proper mental health services, like proper reform. And I've always been asked, what does that look like for you? Well, first of all, we'll have a trauma-informed society. We won't be telling people to man up anymore. We won't be telling people that pull your socks up or your big girl pants on or anything like that, because that is not productive. We'll have a nation that understands mental health and understands that some days we might feel like this, but it's not forever. And give our youth, specifically our youth, because they're our future, give them some kind of toolkit to deal with natural life stresses. We've got exams, we've got relationships, we've got all these kind of natural life stresses that we all deal with. Why not give our youth that toolkit to deal with that? And then, rather than getting it to crisis, get the early intervention in, try and get your tier 1, your tier 2 mental health services, rather than a lot of services in Scotland only take in referrals for tier 4. So what happens with tier 1, 2, 3? You wait till they get to 4 when you could get in at 1, get early intervention. And the big thing for me is I'd love to see is some kind of accident emergency for mental health. So if somebody is struggling, like we do with accident emergency at the minute, if they're struggling, they've got a door they can go through and get assessed, get help as and when it's required. Know this, having to go to accident emergency, getting assessed by the medical team, then waiting in the psychiatry team coming up to assess. That all needs to stop. And that's kind of what I've devoted my life to now.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Honestly, John can't speak highly enough of you.
I'm so thankful to have met John.
Same, yeah.
Because I was at a point where I didn't actually know what else to do. I was at that stalemate where I'm near enough finished uni. I've done this research. I didn't know where to take the research for after that. I wasn't doing it as part of my course because I've kept it completely separate. So I've still managed to do my course while doing this and everything else I do. Because another area I'm trying to raise awareness for is mental health carers. So I never recognised I'm a carer for my son, but I never recognised I was a carer for Luke for many, many years. And it's only recently that I've realised that. And I think carers we're already an undervalued area in society. Yeah. Mental health is the Cinderella service of the NHS. So you put that together and it's even more isolated, even more excluded from carers in the NHS. Yeah. So I'm always trying to find where can I improve the mental health service.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, because any awareness that's happening is definitely worth it.
In the interest of balance, I reached out to MSP Mary Todd, who is the Minister for Social Care, Mental Wellbeing and Sport, to give a response to some of the issues that Karen has brought up. She kindly sent a voice note as a response, and this is what she said.
Hi there, it's Marie Todd, Minister for Social Care, Mental Wellbeing and Sport. Just with a few thoughts on the mental health service in Scotland. So although there is still a great deal of work to be done, we are seeing lots of positive developments to the whole mental health system. If we reflect on the whole, we have record numbers of staff. providing more varied mental health support and services to a larger number of people than ever before. Now, that reflects the priority that this government places on mental health and wellbeing, and it shows that we are making progress towards the vision and the outcomes that were outlined in our mental health and wellbeing strategy. In the first half of this year, we've seen the best national performance against CAMHS waiting times since that 18-week standard was introduced 10 years ago in 2014. The last 2 years show the highest number on record of people starting treatment from CAMHS. 1 in 2 children and young people who are referred to CAMHS now start treatment within 6 weeks, compared to 12 weeks pre-pandemic. So there's a statistic that has dramatically improved since the pandemic. CAMHS staffing's increased by more than 63% in the last decade, and we've exceeded our commitment to provide funding for 320 additional staff in CAMHS by 2026, increasing capacity for cases by over 10,000. Now, that's what's happening in CAMHS in the very specialist service. It's really important that help and support is available at all levels of need, not just through specialist service. In the first half of 2023, more than 58,000 children, young people and their family members access community-based mental health support. So that's via funding that goes to local authorities for community provision. We've also ensured access to counselling services in secondary schools. We've announced funding for a 4th year of our community mental health and wellbeing for adults, meaning that we've made available £66 million for grassroots projects through that fund since 2021. And the fund has supported an estimated 300,000 people across Scotland in its first year alone. That will bring our investments in community-based supports for children, for young people and for adults to over 130 million since 2020. As well as that, over 70,000 people have now been referred to our world-leading distress brief intervention programme, and that's a phenomenal programme that's available all over the country and is making a difference on the front line, a non-clinical programme that's making a difference in the front line to people in distress. We've exceeded our commitment to fund over 800,000 mental health workers, additional mental health workers in A&E departments, GP practices, police custody suites and prisons. And alongside COSLA, we're also delivering an ambitious 10-year suicide prevention strategy which tackles the causes of suicide. It's backed by record investment of 2.6 million in 24-25. And we've published the world's first dedicated self-harm strategy and action plan, backed by 1.5 million investment. We'll continue to work hard to further improve the whole system, so we're not at all complacent, let me absolutely assure you. And what we are working towards is the right help being available in the right place and at the right time for all levels of need. Thank you.